Okay, class. So we are starting now. I hope let's some participants join. Can someone please post on the WhatsApp group just to join G1 to G6 and G7 to G12? Hopefully, class in the Dropbox, you are able to see the recursion underscore factorial and recursion underscore Fibonacci, these two programs. If not, you can click the same link and just save to Dropbox again. Although Dropbox was installed just for the purpose that it seamlessly actually syncs, and it should sync actually. Okay, so we start with today's lecture. So can you see the recursion factorial and recursion Fibonacci in Dropbox? Whoever has installed it? Yes, no, can't say. So I assume it's a yes. Okay. Okay, so we saw yesterday like swap by value and swap by reference. So basically we were just doing a simple function call to swap function, and the function was called only once, right? This function, swap function, calls the swap definition, does some operation and goes back to the main function. Now there is a concept in C which is known as recursion, right? Recursion is a special thing in C, so it is always better to actually see it using an example, right? So let us come to the whiteboard now. So if you see this particular sheet, the standard example recursion that you will see online, okay, this is one of n 6 May, is like factorial. And why do we call it recursion? Because when a function calls itself, right? So the important thing is the function calls itself. Now what is the difference here? So if you can see here, when we did swap by value, this is the main function which is calling the swap function, right? So the main function, so if I see in the swap function, we have something called main which calls on the swap function, and here we define the swap definition. So let me just show you on the whiteboard. So we have the main function that is actually calling the swap function. The swap function jumps outside the main, does the operation and return back to the semicolon point, right? Now what happens as against this in recursion? We will just see it later, but an example of recursion is factorial. So let's say factorial of 5 is equal to basically 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, right? This is a factorial of 5. You can also write 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5. It's the same thing. Now if you see, this basically is nothing but 5 is equal to 5 into factorial of 4, right? Now factorial of 4 can be written as 4 into factorial of 3. Again 3 can be written as, so this continues basically 5 into 5 into, and factorial of 3 will be factorial of 3 into, sorry, 3 into factorial of 2. This will become 2 into factorial of 1. Now we know that factorial of 1 is 1, right? And now if you expand this series, you can actually see this goes up till the last 5 into 4 into 3 into, right? Now you can assume this, like let me take a pen color. So you can see this factorial is a function, right? Why it's a function? Because it has round parentheses. So this function factorial of 4 is calling another function which is factorial of 3, right? Because it's a function, you can see that. Again factorial of 3 is calling factorial of 2. Again it's a function. So you can see the same name, the same factorial is calling a factorial function, then it's calling a factorial function, then it's calling a factorial function again, and then finally we exit at a particular point, because we know that the last value of a function is 1. Factorial of 1 or 0 is 1, right? Now we will just see programmatically how it can be done, right? So let us come back to the VS Code. So in VS Code, the code is recursion factorial. So let me just first execute the code, right? So I have written many printfs in this statement so that you can understand the same workflow, right? You can understand the same workflow using a program. So just let me do a next here. Let me run the code. So it is asking me, and so we begin with int main, and then it is asking me for a positive integer. Let me enter 5. So n will have the value 5, right? If we are entering n is equal to 5. And then I am calculating the factorial. See, in the printf function itself, I am passing the factorial function. Then that is allowed, right? I am getting two values, d and long integer, and I am passing the factorial function, right? So let me enter 5 first. So you can see in the end, factorial of 5 is 120. So let me just put this into some new lines. So it will appear nicely. CLS. So you can see factorial of 5 is 120. It is coming on the screen. So just let me zoom in. So you can see factorial of 5 comes out to be 120. Now let us come back to the main code, how it executes, right? So factorial is being called. So the moment I declare this function, and n in our case is 5, right? So now here what happens, the value of n gets copied here. So what I'm doing here, I'm printing this. Let me just get the screen a bit up. So I will first print starting factorial function with n equal to, right? So n is equal to 5, obviously. So you can see the output comes here, starting factorial function with n equal to 5. So everything is fine. Now I am checking a loop. If n is greater than 1, right? So initially we had n is equal to 5. So just double this, n is equal to 5. So obviously 5 is greater than 1. So this becomes a true statement. 5 greater than 1. So what will I do? I will enter this if loop. In the if loop, I am actually printing this one. So let me just put a tab also here first, and let me run the code again. Right? So you can see 5 greater than 1. So it will print in if part called factorial function with n into, because see what we are doing in this case, you can see the return statement. So what I am doing, whatever number I am having, let's say 5 in this case, I am returning 5 multiplied by factorial of 5 minus 1, which is 4, which is nothing that which I showed you on this particular sheet, right? So factorial of 5 is 5 into factorial of 4, which is nothing but factorial of n will be n into factorial of n minus 1. This is the same thing that I am writing in the C clause. So I am returning, so indirectly this will return 5 into factorial of 5 minus 1, which is nothing but 4, right? So now you can see I am highlighting the word factorial, right? I called the factorial first time from the main function. See, this is the main function. I am calling the factorial from the main function. I reach at this point, and now you can see the return statement itself is calling the factorial function. See, the factorial function is defined from here to here, right? This is the entire definition of factorial function. But in our case, what is happening? You see this factorial function is from line number 13 to line number 26. And in the return statement, I am calling the factorial from within the factorial function. This you just need to pay attention. I am calling the factorial function from within the factorial function. This is the entire definition of factorial. And then I'm calling the factorial again in the factorial. So this philosophy, when a function is calling itself, when the function is calling itself, is known as recursion, right? So it's like call and recall, right? Recall means calling again. So recursion means calling again and again. So what happens? Initially we had n equal to 1, right? So we had this output. In if part, right? I'm actually printing this as it is for your understanding. Calling the factorial function n into factorial of n minus 1. Basically, I'm calling this part, right? So what will be this part returning? 5 into factorial of 4, right? So when I return this part, nothing on this part will be executed. It again calls the factorial function but with a value 4. So when n becomes 4, what will happen? It will again come in this loop. It will starting the factorial function with n equal to, so you can see now it is starting the n equal to 4. Again 4 is greater than 1, so what will happen? It will again come in the if loop, and in the if loop it will again return 4 into factorial of 4 minus 1. So it will return, so see, I called factorial of 4 minus 1, which actually will return 4 into factorial of 4 minus 1, which is nothing but 3. Now factorial of 3 again will be called here, so the value of n will be 3 now. So when n is equal to 3, 3 is greater than 1, again the if loop is true. So what will happen? I will return 3 into factorial of 2. So it will become 3 multiplied by factorial of n minus 1. N in our case was 3. So this becomes factorial of 2. Now factorial of 2 is again passed here. So n equal to 2. 2 is greater than 1, which is a true statement. Since 2 is greater than 1, now we again call this function return n which is nothing but 2. 2 into factorial of 2 minus 1, which is nothing but 1. Now when factorial of 1 is called, so what happens when factorial of 1 is called? N equal to 1. So you can see it will call starting the factorial function with n equal to 1. So this line gets printed because n equal to 1 in the last case. Now if you see our loop, if n is greater than 1, right? So in our case n was equal to 1, right? So n greater than 1, which means 1 greater than 1, which is a false statement, right? Since it's a false statement, this if loop will not execute. It will go to the else part, right? I am written if n equal to 1. So in the else part, what I am doing? In the else part, I am just returning 1. So what I said, the function returns to the point from where it was called. So when factorial 1 was called, I jumped to this particular point, and from this particular point the if clause was failed. I came to the else part, and else part actually returned the value 1. Where it will return? It will return from the point where the function was called. From where the function was called? It was called from line number 19. So when factorial 1 is invoked, I am actually returning the value 1. So this will be replaced by 1, right? So eventually what the function returns? The function is actually returning 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, which is nothing but the factorial of 5, right? So recursion at the start feels a bit cryptic in syntax, but there are many programs like Quicksort, binary tree traversals and all that you can very efficiently write using a recursion. Recursion is actually not efficient in terms of memory, but it provides user with a very intuitive coding practice. You can also write a recursion program using a for loop, right? For I equal to 1, I less than equal to the number, and I is equal to I into number. That is a standard code. But just for a recursion example, factorial provides one of the easiest way to understand. I am also showing you the image of a factorial. How does it actually computes when you write a recursion program? So just have a look at this image. So credits to the online image from where I have taken this. So factorial of 6, right? So what did we write in the code? So we wrote a return as long as the number is greater than 1, right? So 2, 3, 4 up to the integer values. What I am returning? I am returning n, the number itself, into factorial of n minus 1. So just keep this loop in mind, and now let me open the image. So factorial of 6 was there. So n into n minus 1 factorial, right? So n into factorial of n minus 1. So 6 is copied as it is. 6 multiplied by factorial of 5. So now you see it is only expanding factorial of 5, right? It is only expanding the factorial of 5. So what will factorial of 5 become? N, which is 5, multiplied by factorial of n minus 1, which is 4. Then you can see it has put another bracket, which becomes n, which is 4, into factorial n minus 1, which is 3, right? And so on it goes to the point it reaches 2 into factorial of 1, right? Now if you see, when n was greater than 1, right, up till point 2 n was greater than 1, so we were returning n into factorial n minus 1, that is 2 into factorial n minus 1, which became factorial of 1. The moment we get n is equal to 1, what happens? We basically come to this point and the if clause is falsified. So we come to the else part. What is else part returning? Else part will return 1. Where it will return? To the point where the function was called. The function was called on line number 19. So now let us come back to the image. So factorial of 1, when it comes to the else part and we are returning the value 1. So you see 2 and 1. So 2 multiplied by 1 is 2, which basically comes to the previous return part, right? Because the previous function was factorial of 2, which became 2 into 1, which is 2. To the previous part, which was factorial of 3, 3 into factorial of 2, which became 3 into 2, which is 6. Then 4 into 6 became 24. 24 into 5 became 120, and 120 into 6 became 720. And finally, this function returns the value from where it was called. So whether it is 720 or 120, it will return to the point where it was called. It was called at this particular location, and printf prints the correct value of the function. So if I execute this code again, so let me enter 6. So you just keep an eye on this. Initially, when I'm calling n equal to 6, you see we call 6 into factorial of 5. Then we call 5 into factorial of 4. Then we call 4 into factorial of 3. Then we call 3 into factorial of 2. And then we call 2 into factorial of 1. So once the value of n reaches 1, we say that we come to the else part, returning 1. So when you are returning 1, it will return to the last function call. So 2 into 1, which becomes 2. Now this part was nothing but factorial of 2, which is 2, which returns to this part. So this becomes 3 into 2, which is 6. Now 3 into 2 and implied into 1 becomes factorial 3, which is replaced in this part, and so forth this. So I believe this image actually can explain the recursion process very nicely, right? How it actually happens. The function goes on increasing to a level and then actually comes back in the same level. So you can see factorial of 1 is computed here, right? Then factorial of 2 actually comes here. Factorial of 3 comes to 3 and 2. Factorial of 4 comes to 4 and 6. Factorial of 5 comes to 5 and 24. Factorial of 6, 6 into 120. So I would request all of you to try this recursion program. One thing about recursion program is that you need to have an exit clause. See, I'm just showing you an example with a broken code, right? With a broken code means the code that won't work. For example, I'm doing this for n greater than 1, and let's say if I fail to place this particular loop, right? If I comment this particular loop, so let us see what happens. Enter a positive number, right? So it is giving me a wrong output. Actually, what happens is like, this is not a good example to explain. So, okay, just keep in mind one thing. The if loop basically is calling the factorial function again and again and again and again and again, right? So at some point, we need to stop the iteration, right? At some point, we need to stop the iteration. And what is that point? So we need to specify a clause that can exit the loop. What was that in this case? In this case, we said that whenever the number becomes 1, we basically will return 1. So let me just try to form an example here. Okay, any doubts till this point? So by the way, recursion has more disadvantages than advantages. The advantage only is when you write a code, it appears a cleaner code. But in terms of memory management and stack operations, it is very expensive. So as far as possible, try to write codes which are non-recursive based. But there are some cases, as I told, like binary tree traversal, quick sort. So these all codes can be efficient, I mean, very nicely written, just 2 or 3 lines with the help of recursion. So class, we can take a break for 5 minutes. By the time, I hope you can execute this on your Dropbox, try for different values. And second program will be on recursion, which is a Fibonacci based series. So I hope you know what is a Fibonacci series. So we will just take a break of 5 minutes and then we will resume. Okay class, so welcome back. So we begin with our recursion only, and next program that we want to see is Fibonacci. So I hope everybody of you know what is a Fibonacci series. So let me add next. So Fibonacci basically series goes like this. Let me change pen color to black. So the initial numbers are 0 and 1, like, so I can call this as the first term and this as the second term. So the next term in the series basically is the sum of the previous two terms. So I have the first term and second term. So what I will do, I will add these two. So 0 plus 1 is equal to 1. So this becomes the third term, right? So the nth term is basically the sum of, so nth term is equal to n minus first term plus n minus second term. So basically, let me just change the pen color to, let's say, this color. So what will be the fourth term? So if n is equal to 4, so fourth term is equal to n minus 1. So 4 minus v is the third term plus 4 minus 2 is second term. So fourth term is third term plus second term, right? So the previous value, which is nothing but 1, and the previous to previous value, which incidentally happens to be 1 in this particular case, which is equal to 2, right? So it is better to write Fibonacci in this particular order. So first two terms are this. So first term, second term, third term, fourth term, fifth term, sixth term, and seventh term. Right. So let me just get the pen color to black. So basically third term will be summation of these two. So 0 plus 1, which is equal to 1, right? And fourth term will be summation of previous two terms. So 1 and 1. So 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2. So fifth term will be summation of fourth and third. So fourth and third. So 2 plus 1, which is equal to 3, right? So in this way, if I just write a small series, so 0 and 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1, then 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 5 is 13, and so on, right? So this is how a Fibonacci series basically grows, right? So there are many practical applications of Fibonacci series in nature. The growth of leaves for some plants, or the growth of the animals for some particular animals, they basically grow into a Fibonacci series, right? So now if you see this particular thing, right, I'm just highlighting this block. So basically I am defining n in terms of n itself, right? So this itself, you can see the recursion clause, right? I am defining a n value in terms of its own nth value, right? So basically if you can just expand this. So let me just write. So basically nth value is a summation of n minus 1 and n minus 2. Now this is again n. So what I can do, this becomes n. So this n will basically depend on its previous value. So n minus 1 and n minus 1 and minus 2. So this is nothing but n minus 2 and n minus 3. Similarly, this will expand to n minus 3 and n minus 4. And then this tree I can expand as n minus 3 and n minus 4, and it can go long and long enough, right? So this is how a Fibonacci series works. So we assume the first and the second term as constant, 0 and 1. And now let us come back to the code of Fibonacci, right? So in this case, I am defining the function above the main, so there is no need to define. Even if you keep this particular line here, right, the prototype, that does not matter, it won't give a compilation error. So let me just clear the screen. So I will just tell you the code. So what I am doing here, n is equal to 5. So I am computing up till the fifth term, and I am just calling the Fibonacci function, right, for every value from 0 up to 5. Now let us come back to the Fibonacci function. In the Fibonacci function, what I am doing, if I am having n is equal to 0, right, basically the first term, I am returning 0. Why? Because I explained in this particular slide, for the first term and the second term, we are having the static values 0 and 1 for Fibonacci. So you can see if there are no values of n, the first value is always 0 for Fibonacci. The second value, right, the first index is always 1. Else, if the value is greater than 2, then we return Fibonacci of n minus 1 plus Fibonacci of n minus 2. Now just keep an eye on the Fibonacci word, right? Fibonacci is a function here which extends from line number 5 to line number 18, right? Line number 4 to line number 18, right? This is the entire block. Now if you see, the Fibonacci function is being invoked by a call which occurs within the function, right? So the Fibonacci ends here, right? Fibonacci function ends here. It ends here, but you can see this Fibonacci is calling the function itself. So it's a classic case of recursion. So what happens here? Fibonacci is calling with the values n minus 1 and n minus 2, right? So what happens in this particular case? Let us execute the code to get a better understanding. So see, it is only giving the output as Fibonacci of 5 is 0, 1. Then 1 plus 0 plus 1 becomes 1, 1 plus 1 becomes 2, and 1 plus 2 becomes 3. So let us compute for a larger number. Oh, sorry. We have to change the value of n here statically. So when I compute for a larger value, you can see Fibonacci of 8 comes out to this value. Now I will just discuss in brief what is the problem with Fibonacci. What is the problem with recursion? Sorry. You just see what happens here. I am calling the function twice with n minus 1 and with n minus 2. So there is in Dropbox an image for Fibonacci tree, if you can see here, right? So hope this particular image is visible to you. So let me just try to open this, reveal in File Explorer. And this is TickPick. Oh, okay, so there is no option to expand here. Let me just open this image in Paint. Probably it will help. Okay. Right. So you can see here we are computing the Fibonacci of 7, right? So what is Fibonacci of 7? The Fibonacci of 7 as per the function will be, let me just come here. It will be Fibonacci of 7 minus 1, which is 6, and Fibonacci of 7 minus 2, which is 5. That you can see it here, right? So this is basically n minus 1 and n minus 2, right? So again, it's a function. So Fibonacci of 6 is Fibonacci of 5 and 4 because the previous two terms are there. Fibonacci of 5 will be Fibonacci of 4 and 3. So eventually 5 becomes 4 and 3, then 4 becomes 3 and 2, and so on. And finally we return with Fibonacci of 2 and 1. This again will become basically 1 and 0, right? So we know that Fibonacci, so this Fibonacci of 1 is 1, right? This Fibonacci of 1 is again 1. Fibonacci of 1 is again 1. So basically Fibonacci of 2 will be 0 and 1, right? Any order. So again Fibonacci of 1 is 1, Fibonacci of 1 is 1, Fibonacci of 1 is 1. So you can see that for the same Fibonacci value required, right? Fibonacci of 7, I am computing Fibonacci of 1 so many times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And every Fibonacci of 2 will again get expanded into Fibonacci of 1 and Fibonacci of 0. So this is just a wastage of computer resources, right? So you are computing the same value again and again and again and again, right? So basically if I enter a higher value here, right, a Fibonacci program can easily be written using a for loop without recursion. So let me try to enter a higher value here. So let me make this as 4500. I think this will take a long time. So you can see the program is still executing, but see how the output is appearing one after the other, right? And this probably is still on the 20th or 30th term, right? Because if you see these many numbers, so let me just stop the execution in VS Code and let us print the value of I. Percent. So I is equal to percent D, and this is the fib value. So this becomes I comma percent D. So now let us try to execute this. So let us keep it to 50 only. And let me do a /n here. First 100 values, CLS. So you can see I is equal to 29. For the few values it computed very fast, but now for 42, 43 it is coming one after the other, right? Now just try to visualize. So when it is computing fib 44, it was just basically the summation of 43 and 42, which we could have done directly, right? And it would have been very, very efficient. But because it's a recursion, right? And that is why recursion is bad for very huge codes. What is happening when I'm calculating for fib 45? So assume that this is fib 45. Just imagine if the tree for fib 7 is such a huge tree, how long would be it for 45? For 45 it will be 45, 44, 43. Then 44 again computes to 43, 42. 43 goes on to 41, 42 and so on. And that is why you can see how slow the program is now executing, right? The fib value here is negative because I took an integer value and it must have exceeded the bounds, right? So that is why the error is coming. So just a quick case of why recursion is good and why recursion is bad. Recursion is good because make the program very efficient and logical to understand. Because see, from the definition that Fibonacci is the sum of previous two values, you come to know that okay, this is very logical or for factorial, but has a huge computation burden, right? So please avoid recursion as far as possible, right? So this completes the recursion part. I'm stopping the recursion code, just pressing Ctrl C to break in between. And I would just like to cover one more thing. There is a function called size of in C, right? Size of basically tells you the amount of memory that the compiler will allot during the compilation time. So see, I'm defining four types: integer, float, double, and character. And in the print, I am just using, right, I am using ZU. Okay, I think you can just use even a %d would suffice. Basically, it's just an unsigned bytes, basically, nothing else. So let me execute this code, right? So size of int is giving me as 4 bytes, size of float is giving as 4 bytes, size of double is 8 bytes. So basically this will tell you how much space each variable will occupy in the program, right? So integer takes 4 bytes, float takes 4 bytes, double takes this, and character takes this. So now let us define an array also and just check the size. So let us say we have a roll number array which is 25, right? So let me just copy this statement in the last roll array. and this is size of role. So now let us execute the code. So you can see the size of role array became 100 bytes. Why it was? Because see, roll number is an array of type integer. Now we know that size of the integer is 4 bytes, right? It's just 4 bytes. So when you have an array of 25, right? So an array of 25 will be using 25 into 4 bytes, which is nothing but 100 bytes. The moment I change this type to double, right? Now what will happen? Oh, sorry. So double has a memory space of 8 bytes. So when I define a double array with 25 elements, it will be 25 into 8, which is 200 bytes. So let me just execute the code. So you can see the size of this array is 200 bytes, right? So remember that the moment you start compiling your program, so when the compiler actually compiles the program, it actually individually counts. So basically, if I tell you how much memory space will be required by this program, it will be this takes 4 bytes, this takes 4 bytes, this takes 8 bytes, this takes 1 byte, this takes 25 into 8, 200. So it is 4 plus 4, 8, plus 8, 16, plus 1, 17, plus 200. So the total requirement by this program is 217 bytes of memory space, right? So hypothetically assume if your program does not have 217 bytes. So when the compiler compiles your code and it sees that it does not have 217 bytes to allot, the operating system will not allow the execution file to be created and the program will not compile successfully, right? So any doubts or issues? I hope Dropbox is syncing well. And I think for today's lecture only we cover recursion and this size of operator. So we will meet. So tomorrow we have a lecture or no? Okay, tomorrow we don't have a lecture. So we directly meet on the Tuesday. So you can just sync your Dropbox. And once again, we will meet on Tuesday. We will be discussing the scope of the program. Any queries or issues are welcome. If you do not have query or issue, you can exit the WebEx. So we are done with today's lecture. Today's lecture, no, today is 14 only actually. I placed it in the previous one only, lecture 14. You just check your lecture 14. Acha, did it come or no? Lecture 14 May 5.